Hello everyone and welcome back, Dace here. How often do you lose a life with bombs in stock, and what is your response to those situations? Perhaps you're frustrated because you thought you had enough time to react or wouldn't even get hit, so you didn't move. Maybe you restart the entire run thinking you'll respond faster next time, only to fumble the same way but somewhere else. Saving bombs and not using them is often why a run ends prematurely. Experience this repeatedly and it can soon crush your motivation to continue playing. However, while the idea of planned bombs is easy to grasp when we hear the term, changing our habits to align with the concept is not an overnight process. So today we'll explore simple ways to begin implementing this idea so you lose less bombs, less lives, and survive longer. With all that out of the way, let's get into this. I'd like to start things off with an observation. In older war movies revolving around bombing missions, the aircraft always has a specific time, location, and target for dropping the bomb. While many players primarily accept bombs as something to hang on to and only use right before taking a hit, it makes more sense to use them proactively, and here's why. If strictly relying on bombs to save you just before losing a life or taking damage, we actually run a much higher risk of being hit because our survival then depends on our reaction time, and whether or not we even notice the oncoming threat in the first place. Furthermore, it can be draining holding onto bombs if you're constantly on high alert, watching and waiting to use one for a precise moment you don't even know about until it's often too late. I'm not saying never have bombs on hand for emergencies, just reconsider how you view and prioritize them. Let's start putting things into place by looking at a plan of action. This may sound too obvious to bother mentioning, but know precisely how your bombs work and how best to use them. I won't cover everything because bombs are incredibly varied, but here are some questions to ask yourself. Do your bombs grant you iframes? If so, how long are you invincible? Can you use that time to safely reposition yourself or start attacking another enemy? Perhaps this gives you extra time to grab an on-screen item you wouldn't risk collecting otherwise. You may even want to use a bomb specifically to retrieve something you don't want to miss, if it means you won't lose a life in the process. This is all about what plan you put into action. What is your maximum bomb count? If you're already maxed out and know you'll soon receive another, drop a bomb earlier if necessary and use this knowledge to build a more consistent route. Some bombs are easier to use, like screen clearing types, while others may require a positional setup and deal damage within a specific area. You may have infinite bombs, but they operate with a cooldown system, or you need to fill a gauge by destroying enemies or collecting items. Is there a mechanical overlap between your bombs and other facets of the gameplay? Knowing your bombs is essential because the particulars will often alter how you play and prioritize things, especially if used in conjunction with other mechanics to gain a greater advantage, like bombing and point blanking the final boss in Dodonpachi Daifukatsu. In the clip here, I'm using the explosion time iframes to point blank the boss and fill my hyper meter faster than if I was shooting from further away. I can then activate my hyper and use the iframes from that to deal additional damage before dropping another bomb and repeating the process. It's not the most engaging way to bring down this boss, but it's a prime example of how bomb mechanics overlap with other mechanics. Without this knowledge, a player may not realize what's possible. Also, learn where and how to get extra bombs. Sometimes they're hidden in objects you can destroy, or there may be some other requirement. Get a feel for your bomb budget, or where you use the most bombs on average. This will usually be after the first stage or two, but it depends on the game and the player's experience level. With this awareness, we can take action to ensure enough bombs are consistently at our disposal for specific parts of the run. If tackling a new game and you're unsure what you'll be up against, don't hesitate to use a few credits to see where the laid-back and bomb-heavy sections are in each stage. Here's an example of my Mushihime-sama bomb budget. Remember, nothing here is set in stone because your budget will shift as you gain experience, and every run is different, but ultimately, this is about surviving more consistently through planned bombing, so as long as you have a general idea, that's enough to get started. Next is stage practice. This is where we use the approximations from our bomb budget and clean things up by finding and familiarizing ourselves with the specifics. The more precise your bomb drops are with location, timing, position, etc., the more consistently you'll survive a problematic section. A simple method is picking out unique details in the background to hint at what is coming based on how far the stage has scrolled. If you drop an area bomb too early, you may not catch the tail end of an enemy wave, but if you've memorized something in the background, you can fire one off at the same time more consistently to ensure you annihilate the entire group. Sometimes it may be a matter of counting enemies, so you know to drop it once the third or fourth foe has entered the screen. After memorizing the events of any given stage, I sometimes use parts of the game's soundtrack to gauge what will happen in the next few seconds. This is where knowledge of how your bombs work comes in handy, since iframe advantages, drop time, explosion duration, strategic placement or repositioning, etc. will all factor into how, when, and where you'll want to use them for maximum benefit. For instance, if there's an enemy wave approaching and you're using positional bombs, you may want to drop it on one side just before they appear and then position yourself on the opposite side to deal with any foes not caught in the blast. This way you're covering the entire top of the screen with destruction. Or let's say there's a very fast-moving and difficult section where you need to weave through tight passages and avoid walls. If you're constantly hitting a particular section but your bombs give you iframes, drop one and use the invincibility to reach safety. Through practice, you'll quickly know what parts of a stage you can easily manage without bombs and the precise sections requiring a drop or two. Boss practice is similar to stage practice, except we typically have a single target with much larger and deadlier attack patterns. In any event, learn the easy-to-manage parts of the fight and use proactive bombing during the harder phases. If you have screen-clearing bombs and a slow-moving pattern is coming toward you, consider clinging to the bottom of the screen to deal as much damage as possible before firing it off. Or perhaps the bomb deals damage, so you may want to find the best position for using it before retreating so far that you're out of range for an effective drop. Don't be afraid to use multiple bombs to make quick work of a boss. When you're more comfortable with the battle, you can always slim down how many are used. If parting with bombs is still too painful but you truly desire change in your life, here's an exercise for you. Count the total number of bombs you have across your average life count, then spread the bombs across the run's duration. This way you can see how often and early you could be using them. Of course, the game will be harder during the second half and require more bombs. I'm not saying to play the run this way, it's just an exercise so you start giving yourself permission to use them earlier by seeing how they could be dispersed instead of holding onto a stockpile and losing every last one mid-run. What I like doing sometimes is viewing each bomb as a life in addition to my normal lives. This paints a really interesting picture. If I lose my first life and 3 bombs, it's like I just lost 4 lives because each of those bombs could have saved me from something, but I didn't use them. Never think that losing bombs is only something that happens to those with less experience, because even very skilled players will sometimes lose a handful. It happens to everybody. Also, this isn't about never losing another bomb again, but building a greater awareness of the times to use them and getting into the habit of pulling the trigger when necessary. Like anything, there are pros and cons. I won't get too in-depth, but I recommend not letting your reliance on bombs get too out of control, since this can slow the growth of your other skills. So while a section may feel intimidating without bombs, I encourage you to experiment with those parts without using them. See how you can start dodging or dealing with things differently. There will still be plenty of times when you've got no bombs in stock, or you'll just want to be improving a section instead of always needing to lean on bombs to make it through. In a future episode, I'd like to explore the advantages of playing with self-imposed limitations and how we can use this approach to improve our skills significantly. In conclusion, how and when you use bombs is ultimately up to you, and each person will develop their understanding of and relationship to bombs differently. They are certainly a precious resource, but they exist to help you succeed, not to sit and watch you lose unnecessary lives. Plus, if you're going to lose a life, having no bombs lost with it is satisfying in its own way. There's a lot more to this topic, but that's where I'm leaving things off for today. I trust this video is helpful and would love to hear your success stories in the comments or things you still struggle with. Never hesitate to ask for help because either myself or someone awesome will surely chime in. If you enjoyed this video, please consider flinging a like our way and subscribe to keep your days STG infused. Thanks so much for watching and we'll see you next time.